You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth. Hey!
Spanning the continent to bring you the truth about cannabis and marijuana law reform.
I smoke pot and I like it a lot.
The Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation. Now, here's your host, Radical Russ Belville.
Good day, tokers and tokettes and non-toking lovers of liberty. It is Monday, September 29th, 2014, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. Hope y'all had a great weekend. I had a blast myself, and I'm ready to fight the fight again this week. So much to do. We are just, 6 weeks away from marijuana election night 2014. Let's see, there's next Tuesday and then 7, 14, 21, 20. Yeah, 5 weeks away as of tomorrow from marijuana election night 2014. We will bring you live coverage starting at 6 p.m. Eastern time right here on Tuesday, November 4th, with live reports from the polls from Portland, Maine, all the way to Portland, Oregon, from the Great White North of Alaska to the Sunshine State of Florida, and everywhere in between. If they're voting on marijuana or drug law reform, we will be covering it here from the city and the state levels right here at 420radio.org and the Russ Belville Show. All right, on today's show today, which is kind of redundant, isn't it? On today's show today, we're having one of those Mondays, I suppose. But on today's show, we are going to deliver a devastating radical rant at the end of the show. Legalization's coming. Let's risk it all on a waterfront pot party. My review of the Portland hemp stock, and most particularly how the local news media are reporting on the Portland hemp stock that took place this weekend at the waterfront park in Portland, Oregon. Also on the show today, there are new marijuana regulations being promulgated in Colorado today. Over 30 new regulations. We'll give you some of the details on some of the new rules for recreational and medical marijuana in the state of Colorado. Also on the show today, unfortunately, Dr. Mitch can't join us today because he had to have dental work done today and he's still a little bit out of it. So we will take a look at Florida and do a little reefer madness debunked, where we take a look at the current scares that the law enforcement opposition to medical marijuana there are trying to foist on the people. Also, we have got some more drug war data mining. I got a good response from my look at the TEDS-A data last week. This week, there was a interview with a drug rehab specialist who's giving a speech tomorrow, or a talk tomorrow, here in Portland, Oregon at Oregon Health Sciences University. And he made a claim that I'm going to show to be a out and out falsehood when we get some drug war data mining done on that TEDS-A data specific to the state of Oregon. We'll also be coming to you in hour 2 with Toker Talk Radio. I got a few stories from around the world that require a little bit of discussion. But first, we start off with our 420 radio news. And in the headlines today, Governor Cuomo wants to bend the rules to get CBD plants into New York State. Nevada may be hiring on the Arizona researcher who is doing groundbreaking work in post-traumatic stress disorder studies with medical marijuana. The Australian government may be moving forward on medical marijuana, while the Uruguayan government might be backtracking a bit on recreational marijuana, at least what they wish to do with the data they gather on recreational marijuana. And there was another Grow for Vets that took place this weekend in Colorado Springs. We'll tell you about the vets that showed up there and got a donation of free medical marijuana. All that is coming up on the Russ Belville Show here, so stick around for the net's best source of news and interviews you can use for the cannabis community. We're back with the news right after this.
You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
You can get 420 Radio on the go with the TuneIn Radio app for all mobile platforms. Go to rad-r.us/420tunein or just click the TuneIn Radio icon below the live radio feed on 420radio.org. It was a nightmare scenario last May for one Southern Oregon woman. It's 4 a.m. and someone's trying to break in.
911 emergency. My ex-boyfriend is trying to break into my house. He put me in the hospital a few weeks ago, and I've been trying to keep him away.
But because of budget cuts, the sheriff's office is only open during weekday business hours.
I don't have anybody to send out there. If he comes inside the residence and assaults you, can you ask him to go away? Or
he did break into the home, and he did rape and choke this woman. Meanwhile, it was announced that the Oregon Sheriff's Association made a $100,000 donation to the campaign against Measure 91, the initiative to legalize marijuana. So there's enough money to protect people from marijuana, but not rapists? Measure 91 devotes 35% of tax revenues from marijuana sales to state and local police. Vote yes on Measure 91. A message from the Russ Belville Show, not endorsed or sponsored by the Measure 91 campaign. 420radio.org is proud to replay Green Stream Radio with Grandma Cat, Tim, me, and On One from Olympia, Washington. Green Stream is bringing you the latest developments in legalization in Washington state straight from the state capitol, plus on-site shows at emerging cannabis clubs and hemp fests. Catch the replays Tuesday at 11 Pacific on...
Mike Schwab is a former middle school science and math teacher. Currently, he works with Children Daily as an after-school program leader.
Currently, kids have easy access to marijuana with little understanding of its impact. We can take better care of our kids through Measure 91 with strict regulations and funding for proven marijuana education and prevention programs to keep kids from using it. Under our current marijuana laws, one mistake can ruin a life. Measure 91 removes unfairly harsh punishment for marijuana offenses and gets more tax money to local police and drug prevention. Vote yes on 91.
It's time for the 420 Radio News, covering the latest headlines in consumer cannabis, medical marijuana, and industrial hemp. Transcripts of 420 Radio News are available daily on our website at 420radio.org. Now, here's Russ Belville with your marijuana headlines in 4 minutes and 20 seconds.
This is your 420 Radio News for Monday, September 29th, 2014. New York Governor Andrew M. Cuomo is asking the U.S. Justice Department for a waiver to permit the state to import limited amounts of marijuana for the treatment of seriously ill children and young adults who suffer from rare seizure disorders, just less than a year after he opposed the use of medical marijuana. Governor Cuomo seeks federal permission for New York to work with private companies to supply special strains of marijuana, since Cuomo signed a law in July making New York the 23rd state to legalize medical marijuana. At least 3 children with the seizure disorders have died. While Cuomo signed the medical marijuana legislation in July, a host of hurdles, from its many restrictions to developing a system for dispensing to how the crop can be grown in New York, will keep the program from being up and running until January 2016 or later. Nevada's state and federal lawmakers have been working to bring medical marijuana researcher Dr. Sue Sisley to the University of Nevada, Las Vegas to conduct a pilot study on the safety and efficacy of marijuana on veterans with chronic and treatment-resistant post-traumatic stress. While the study would be financially supported by sponsors and not receive any federal money, it has received all the federal approvals, said Sisley, who has been working on securing the study since 2011. She is hoping the university will provide the research space. She would study 5 different strains of marijuana that would be smoked or vaporized and inhaled by 70 veterans. It would be the first and only randomized controlled trial in the country looking at marijuana in treating post-traumatic stress disorder. Sisley gave a presentation September 22nd to the University of Nevada, Las Vegas Psychology Department's faculty board about joining as a research faculty member. The Australian federal government would be given oversight over the production and distribution of medical cannabis under new legislation to make the drug available to patients with chronic pain. The push to legalize medical cannabis is gathering pace, with Greens Senator Richard DiNatale, chairman of the cross-party parliamentary group for drug policy and law reform, now finalizing a bill that is set to be introduced into Parliament next month. Supporters of legalized medical cannabis have been buoyed by Prime Minister Tony Abbott's strong public support for the legalization of the drug for medical use.
Senator DiNatale, a former GP, is also pushing for the Therapeutic Goods Administration to create a special category for the drug so that it can be available with a doctor's prescription. The TGA currently lists cannabis as a prohibited substance in Australia. Following a campaign on behalf of terminally ill Tamworth man Daniel Haslam, the New South Wales government announced a clinical trial of medical cannabis earlier this month. The Uruguayan presidential candidate favored by drug policy reform advocates, ex-President Tamari Vázquez, has proposed to use the registry of marijuana buyers and cultivators created by the law as a way to expose them to drug treatment. Quote, "There will be a record of drug users, and that registry of drug users via the sale in pharmacies will provide a greater understanding of those who are involved with drugs and will give the state the opportunity to try to rehabilitate this person at earlier stages." End quote. During the debate over the law last year, the existence of the registry itself caused some controversy, with several pundits calling it invasive. To reassure these critics, the bill was amended to state that the registries will be sensitive data that cannot be revealed, quote, "without the individual's express written consent," end quote. Vázquez's talk of the state using the registry to rehabilitate users, then, seems to contradict the spirit of this provision. A marijuana giveaway for veterans attracted about 1,000 people to a Colorado hotel. The Grow for Vets giveaway in Colorado Springs aimed to bring cannabis-based treatments to veterans with service-related conditions as an alternative to pain medications. Roger Martin, the executive director and co-founder of Operation Grow for Vets, which put on the event, said the group's goal is to bring cannabis to veterans with service-related conditions as an alternative to pain medications. Marijuana activists have tried unsuccessfully to have post-traumatic stress disorder added to the Colorado list of medical conditions that qualify for joining the medical marijuana registry. Now that pot is legal for all adults over 21, organizers are free to give away marijuana. Not all who received the bag were veterans. A $20 donation from non-veterans was encouraged. This has been your 420 Radio News for Monday, May 29th, 2014, September 29th, pardon me. I'm Russ Belville. You can get 420 Radio on the go with the Ustream video app for Android and iPhone. Go to rad-r.us/420Ustream or just click the Ustream app icon for Android or iPhone below the live radio feed at 420radio.org.
There's so much I worry about as a mom. Stephen Harper thinks that organized crime should continue to profit from marijuana prohibition. Imagine regulating marijuana like alcohol and cigarettes with a strong and clear educational message, making it more difficult for my kids and your kids to access. Drug dealers don't ask for ID. Stephen Harper does not have the kind of judgment we need to protect our children, authorized by the normal.
Despite strong public support for medical cannabis, decriminalization, and legalization in Georgia, the state spends $121 million every year to arrest, prosecute, and imprison Georgians for simple possession. Each year, the state of Georgia spends less on driver services, agriculture, and forestry combined. What else can $121 million a year do in Georgia? With that much money, the state could hire and keep 3,000 more teachers, improve roads and bridges, provide tax relief for small businesses, repair aging sewage systems, or lower taxes. But right now, that's millions of dollars of your tax money wasted on failed enforcement. Tell your representative you're tired of wasteful spending and ask them to end cannabis prohibition. Join the conversation at www.peachtreenormal.org. Peachtree Normal is a proud affiliate of NORML, the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws.
Welcome back, everybody. It's 14 after the hour and time for us to go behind the headlines. We're in Colorado. They have rolled out some 30 new rules for the marijuana industry. These are rolling out today, according to the state's Marijuana Enforcement Division. I'm sorry, the new rules were released Thursday, but they're already in effect here. So this was released from the Marijuana Enforcement Division that changed such things as the startup licensing fees, and the rules for cultivation, production, edibles, sales, employee training, and product testing. And they even note right down to a hand washing requirement. And that kind of surprised me when I read it, because I thought, wait, there's not already a requirement that somebody washes their hands if they're going to be handling our medicine, our buds? Okay, but there we go. We now have a hand washing requirement. There was a very controversial provision of this that was discussed, and we discussed this in Washington State as well with a gentleman, and I believe it was at the Main Street Marijuana Shop in Vancouver. That's it. It was a Main Street Marijuana, and the guy was from Kennesaw, and he was talking about sun-grown marijuana. And Colorado, as they were proposing these new regulations, were proposing a rule that would make it so greenhouses could only produce half as the amount of plants as indoor warehouse grows could have. And of course, all the sun growers threw a fit about this and pointed out how environmentally damaging that kind of rule is. Of course, if you present an incentive for someone to grow inside, if they can grow twice as many plants, you're just wasting more energy and resources to pull that off when sun-grown marijuana can take far fewer resources and, help us reduce greenhouse emissions and such. So they changed that. In the new rules that came out, there is no distinction between a indoor warehouse grow and an outdoor greenhouse grow. The same number of plants, 3,600, are allowed at the level tier 1 productions there. The Enforcement Division also established vendor training requirements for safety and public health requirements for anybody manufacturing edible marijuana products. I believe that would include that hand washing requirement. Glad to hear that we've got that. If they have to wash their hands to make my Subway sandwich, they should have to wash their hands to fill my bag of buds. But here's some good stats that came out of this. Marijuana occupational licenses. If you want to work in the marijuana industry, you have to get a card from the Marijuana Enforcement Division. The Marijuana Enforcement Division has told us now that they have issued 18,666 occupational licenses. There's the jobs we're talking about. And that's just the direct jobs that come from marijuana. That's just the people who directly touch the plants, the buds, the tinctures, the edibles, and so forth. Doesn't even begin to count the law firms, the compliance specialists, the software trainers, the product packaging manufacturers. There's so many ancillary industries that have been bolstered by this marijuana legalization that for every one of those 18,666 jobs, there's got to be at least 3 other jobs that are feeding that job as far as supplies, logistics, and support. They currently note there are 496 licensed medical shops in Colorado and another 242 recreational stores. The state has received 177 additional applications for recreational stores and grow operations that could be approved by this Wednesday. So let's see, 242, 342, and another 77. So 400. We're rapidly approaching having as many recreational marijuana shops in Colorado as we do medical marijuana shops. Another controversy that was addressed by these new regulations had to do with finalizing the single serving size of an edible. Single serving size of an edible in Colorado will now be limited to 10 milligrams of active THC, and any item that contains multiple servings will have to clearly mark how many servings are in it, right? So if you're talking about a soda bottle and it's a 16-ounce bottle and it's an 8-ounce serving, then you have to indicate the bottle has 2 servings in it. In the case of things like chocolates and edibles, they have to be clearly marked to be able to break them apart into serving sizes. So this is some good news, especially as the reaction to Maureen Dowd and other high-profile over-medible cases, people who've used too many medibles and gotten themselves sick, has been a real black eye to legalization, and really one of the only downsides that the opponents have been able to seize on. So it's good that our industry is getting a handle on this and being proactive about the amount of THC per serving. Now, there's also some testing requirements that have changed. Not only will there be testing for potency in edibles, but also for chemicals like pesticides in the presence of fungi. But there is a serious problem, in my opinion, with the new testing rules, and that is marijuana testing facilities will only test product from licensed cultivation centers, not home growers or medical marijuana caregivers. This is really disturbing to me, because it sets up this situation where
as a consumer, the only safe place I can get marijuana that I know has been tested is going to be from a pot shop or from a dispensary.
You know, there are times where I've fallen off the wagon.
But why shouldn't a medical marijuana caregiver or home grower be able to certify that what they're growing or supplying to patients matches the same stringent requirements as we require of the commercial growers? That just makes no sense to me. If we're going to have a standard, let everyone meet that standard and let everyone get more data and more testing. Hey, happy 420, Denver. We'll be back right after this with some drug war data mining.
420 Radio is 24-hour marijuana legalization radio. At Herbie's Cannabis Seeds, we pride ourselves on bringing you the best quality seeds from the world's most respected cannabis seed producers, all at the lowest online prices. You can find Herbie's Seeds at herbiesheadshop.com. All cannabis seeds are sold as souvenirs and as a means of preserving cannabis genetics. Herbie's Seeds in no way intends to condone, promote, or incite the use of illegal or controlled substances. We strongly urge all prospective customers to check their national laws prior to placing an order. Herbie's Seeds at herbiesheadshop.com. Proud sponsors of the Russ Belville Show and 420 Radio. Toker Talk Radio, the voice of the marijuana nation, America's #1 daily call-in show for the cannabis community. Every weekday at 4 and 7 Pacific on 420radio.org. Are you a hypocrite? If you live a closeted cannabis lifestyle, you are. Read about 7 people living a closeted cannabis lifestyle who are on the verge of coming out in The Hypocrites by Mara K. Eaton. Available at areyouahypocrite.net. You can purchase the book on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, also available on iTunes. Check out Mara K. Eaton on Facebook as well. Learn more at areyouahypocrite.net. Arguing for the end of adult marijuana prohibition is easy because we have facts, science, reason, compassion, evidence, truth, and logic on our side. It is even easier when researchers catalog it all for us. Learn how to gather the facts on marijuana use, arrests, seizures, rehabs, drug tests, and more in this edition of Drug War Data Mining.
Welcome back, everyone. 23 after the hour. And this headline in my local newspaper, the Oregonian, reads, "Marijuana use among young people to be discussed as part of free forum this week on drug addiction." And in it, they do a Q&A with Dr. Andrew Mendenhall, who's the outpatient medical director at Hazelden in Beaverton. So they asked a drug rehab guy about how addictive marijuana could be for young people. Guess what? He said down at the very bottom, "I don't think there's a safe level of marijuana consumption." That's right. Nobody can consume any marijuana, even an adult, without it being a problem. But I didn't want to focus on that. I wanted to focus on this drug war data mining piece where he says, quote, "Cannabis dependence is the most common addiction among people 14 to 24 years old seeking treatment at the Beaverton Clinic." Now, I don't have any numbers on the Hazelden Clinic in Beaverton specifically, but I can get you numbers from the treatment episode data set, which is all of the rehab admissions to the hospitals throughout the country that get public funds. And we worked with this a little bit last week, but we want to take a look and find out what is the #1 substance people are going in to rehab for. Now, within TEDS, we have a number of variables that are available to us. And under the original variables for substances of abuse, there are 3 substances listed: primary, secondary, and tertiary, as far as what's the drug the person's coming in for. Some people may come in for more than one drug. They might be alcoholic heroin addicts, for example. So I like to look at the primary substance, and this is something called sub 1. And if we take sub 1 and put that into the row, we can then run our table and find that the primary substance people go to rehab for is alcohol. 39.1% of the people go to rehab for alcohol, whereas 17.5% go for marijuana and 16.4% are going in for heroin. Those are the 3 largest categories. But that's all people going to rehab for all reasons. What if we narrowed that down? He said people aged 18 to 24 in his quote. So we can narrow that down to people aged
18 to 24. There's a thing called the selection filters that allow us to use a variable to reduce the output by a particular variable. In this case, we're going to use age, and the age isn't the actual age, but it's categorized into like 14 and 15-year-olds, 16 and 17-year-olds, 18 through 20-year-olds, etc. Categories 2 through 5 include everyone aged 14 through age 24. So we'll use that to narrow it down. What is the primary substance people go to rehab for? We run that table and we find, once again, a difference. 41.6% of the people going to rehab for marijuana if we look at people under the age of 25. Almost twice as many who go there for alcohol. However, this statistic is also skewed by something. We're looking at all people everywhere. We're not just looking at the state of Oregon. Fortunately, Ted Zay gives us another variable called OR state, like state of Oregon, OR. And if you put OR state 1 in here, that'll give you only the people from whom were the state that were from the state of Oregon. We run that table and we find that it's evened out a bit. Marijuana is 38% in Oregon versus 31% for alcohol. But this still reflects all people going to rehab for all reasons. Remember, our Hazelden guy said people seeking treatment. This would not include people who are in treatment because the criminal justice system forced them there. We can use a variable called p-source to tell us what sent someone to rehab. And when we run that, we can find that when it comes to the criminal justice system, the criminal justice system is sending 37.9% for marijuana, but 43% for alcohol. Looking it down to just self-referrals, we see 27% for marijuana, but 33, almost 34% for heroin. So in no way is this statement by the Hazelden guy, which again, he said, cannabis dependence is the most common addiction among people 14 to 24-year-old seeking treatment. Well, at the state level for the entire state of Oregon, for the individuals, the self-referrals, people who are seeking treatment, the number one drug they're going in for is heroin, 34%, 1 out of 3. That is followed by marijuana at 27.5%, and then methamphetamine at 14.8%. We see when we look at school educational, 82% of the people sent by schools to rehab are being sent there over marijuana. That's kids getting caught in school with pot, people. 420 Radio, the activist radio station. The law offices of Omar Figueroa would like to remind you to stand up for your rights. If you are detained or arrested, treat law enforcement with respect and stand up for your rights by repeating, I respectfully invoke all of my legal and constitutional rights. I do not consent to any search and seizure. I want to remain silent, and I want to speak with my attorney. Please contact the law offices of Omar Figueroa at 415-489-0420 or 707-829-0215 or on the web at omarfigueroa.com.
NORMAL stands for Responsible Adult Cannabis Use. If cannabis use is causing problems in your life, consider taking a break or seeking medical assistance. Consider ceasing cannabis use if you have a family history of mental illness. Don't drive or operate heavy machinery while impaired by cannabis use. Cannabis use is not without risks, even though the risks may be far less than those posed by legal drugs.
You know Herb Thrasher from the Herb Thrasher Flower Hour. Now get ready for Herb Age Designs for the proud cannabis consumer. Herb Age Designs, lifestyle gear for the 420 friendly. Herb Age Designs, we've got frisbee golf discs and durable hemp gear. Herb Age Designs, we've got shot glasses, drinking glasses, coffee mugs, and beer cozies. Check us out on Facebook and online at herbagedesigns.com and follow Herb Age and Herb Thrasher on Twitter.
Marijuana is an addictive drug which produces in its users insanity, criminality, and death. Marijuana is the most violence-causing drug in the history of mankind. If the hideous monster Frankenstein came face-to-face with the monster of marijuana, he dropped dead from fright.
You know, it's not easy countering 7 decades of propaganda in a 2-hour show, but let's try. It's time for the Russ Belville Show's Reefer Madness Debunked.
Welcome back, everybody. Half past, and normally we'd be speaking with Dr. Mitch Earlywine, but the doctor is out today. He had to have some dental work done, and he's still in pain and under the influence of Novocaine and other pain relievers. He said this would probably not be the best day, so we will let you get well soon, Dr. Mitch. And in the meantime, I'll take a look at what's going on in the state of Florida. I received this press release via Digital Journal, and the headline reads, "Families Briefed on the Dangers of Pot by Executive Director John Redmond." Now, John Redmond is the Executive Director of Californians for Drug-Free Youth and Director of Demand Reduction for California's high-intensity drug trafficking area. Other information, let's see about this. He's been rewarded for distinguished service from the Office of the National Drug Control Policy and was honored in 2008 and 2011 as the Citizen of the Year from the California Narcotics Officers Association, that bastion of scientific inquiry. So, John Redmond is going around in Florida trying to scare the hell out of Floridians over their vote for Amendment 2, which would legalize medical marijuana in the state. The polls currently are hovering around the 60% mark that it needs to pass. So any amount of fear and doubt they can sow is going to help them move that needle toward no. So, he gave a talk on his work experiences with legalized medical marijuana in California. Now, comparing California and Florida for their medical marijuana is a little bit of an apples and oranges comparison, in that California has famously started off with the most lax medical marijuana statute allowed in the country. Florida's would actually have a condition list and be a little better regulated than California. But what he brings up is that Floridians can expect pot shops everywhere. And the first line that he delivers here, per an NPR story in October of 2009, of all things, quote, "In some neighborhoods, there are more medical marijuana dispensaries than Starbucks." I want to just attack that little bit of reefer madness right off the bat. This common line, "There's more dispensaries than Starbucks." Oh my God! People can go get marijuana at more dispensaries than Starbucks. Yeah, but can people go get marijuana at more places than there are outlets for getting coffee? Another example of an apples to oranges comparison. They say, oh, more dispensaries than Starbucks. Oh my God. But there's other coffee shops other than Starbucks. There's restaurants other than Starbucks. There's actual, rest areas where you can stop on the freeway and there'll be a nice group of elderly volunteers who will give you free coffee. There's nowhere near that many outlets to get marijuana. This scare is supposed to be, because we see Starbucks everywhere, we'll see marijuana dispensaries everywhere. And what is the problem with seeing a marijuana dispensary? Oh, look, there's a building that has security at the front of it that requires you to buzz into a door to gain entrance, where your identification for legal age is checked, where you're in a medical state with a medical card, your medical marijuana card is checked to see if it is valid. As it would be checked in Florida, you would have to be an adult. You would have to have a medical marijuana card, and you could go into this dispensary, which these dispensaries, by the way, usually don't have windows. You can't see the people inside. You can't see the product inside. So people are going into a secure private place where their ID and qualifications are checked, purchasing some marijuana, and then leaving. Why is this such a frightening prospect? See, they keep saying pot shops as if what's going to get set up here is some sort of lounge, like a tavern for weed where people are going to go in and get their weed, start smoking it and having a good old time. And that's not at all what Florida would allow. And that's not at all what dispensaries allow throughout the country. Dispensaries don't have on-site consumption, not in Oregon. Not in any of the places like Colorado or New Mexico that have severely regulated these things. And that's what Amendment 2 gives the power for Florida regulators to do as well. But the scare story here is based on prejudice. It's based on bigotry. It's based on the idea that there'll be shops full of those people. Those people will be there. You'll see all the tie-dyes and the hippies and the stinky people and the pierce and the tattoos and those people. That's what it really has to do with. Especially when you read his next point, which he says an unregulated pot shop system that translates into thousands of shops opening at the beaches and throughout Florida neighborhoods, next to schools and churches, within easy walking distance of children. Why does that matter? There's a dispensary. There's 4 or 5 of them on Sandy Boulevard here in Portland, Oregon. If your kid came to Portland, your kid could fly in, catch the MAX train, the light rail, or catch a bus, get right down on Sandy Boulevard and be within easy walking distance. I know of a spot on Sandy where there's 2 pot shops within 4 blocks. One on 28th, one on 24th. Collective Awakenings on 28th, Treehouse Collective on 24th. Your kid, we could drop him off at 26th and Sandy, and he'd be in walking distance of 2 dispensaries and never be able to get into either of them. Now, he could also walk by that same 4-block stretch, a couple of bars that have some open patio dining where people are consuming beer and wine openly, and who sometimes, when they're done eating, drop off their check and leave it there on the outdoor table with all their half-finished beers and wine. Your kid might be able to get access to that, but he's not going to be able to get into those pot shops. Now, the scare story from Florida wouldn't be complete without a little bit more of the WotC. What about the children, WotC? Here's his quote. Oh, actually, this is a quote from Luis Colon, who's a father of 4 and the CEO of MGE Management Experts. MGE Management Experts training is based on the administrative technology of L. Ron Hubbard. You know, the Scientology guy. So this is probably valid stuff, right? Luis Colon says, quote, even more frightening for parents is that Amendment 2 permits our children to be classified as qualifying patients, which comes with the constitutional right to obtain medical marijuana without their parents' consent or knowledge. In addition to no parental consent requirements, there are no age limits or limits on the amount of dope and edibles someone can get. This means our kids can get pot without our consent. It can be edible, so we'll never smell it, and we will never know if they don't tell us, we don't find their stash, or we don't catch them using. All right, before I get to the first part of that, let's tackle the second part. Your kids might be able to get a hold of pot. You'll never smell it because it's edible. You'll never know it if they don't tell you, or if you don't find their stash, or if you don't catch them using. So how big of a problem is your kids' marijuana use if you can't tell without catching them? How much of a problem is that, really? But as far as this kids being classified as qualifying patients, yeah, sure. Sure, if they can go to the doctor with their parents and get the qualification, they're going to be able to set up all sorts of regulations regarding how children will be able to qualify. There are kids with medical marijuana cards here in the state of Oregon. There's kids with medical marijuana cards in the state of Colorado. But we're usually talking about kids with epilepsy or cancer or something serious here. Why would we deny to someone an effective medicine just because they haven't reached age 18 yet? Oh, yes, because of our bigotry against cannabis. That's why. Mary Pickett from Harvard Medical School also spoke at this event in Tampa for the folks trying to scare everyone about Amendment 2. And she says, quote, health hazards are much greater for people who begin use before age 21 because the brain is still developing during the teen years. Evidence suggests that effects on the brain from marijuana use by adolescents and teens can be permanent, end quote. Well, gosh, we better not legalize for kids. See, this scare about the kids who use before age 21. If I'm looking at a kid who's got severe seizures, who's having 100 seizures a day, I got to ask myself, gosh, is the chance this kid might lose 8 points of IQ along the same lines of the kid losing all his or her mental faculties because of the seizures that happen all the time? Is the risk that a kid might become dependent on cannabis really something that's going to forego me saving the kid's life when the kid has epilepsy? Her article continues to discuss the other sorts of risks from marijuana, including addiction, withdrawal symptoms, gateway drug, abnormal brain development, schizophrenia, depression and anxiety, diminished lifetime achievement, motor vehicle accidents, and chronic bronchitis. Wow, you got the whole cornucopia there. Okay, so addiction, about the same level as coffee. Withdrawal symptoms, again, about the same level as quitting coffee. Gateway drug, debunked since 1999 by the Institute of Medicine. Abnormal brain development, perhaps if you're using chronically for years and years and years. Schizophrenia. We've seen no change in the rates of schizophrenia diagnoses for about a century, even as the rates of marijuana use have skyrocketed. And recent research shows that the genes responsible for contributing to schizophrenia may also be contributing to the want to use cannabis. It's not that cannabis causes schizophrenia, it's that schizophrenia leads people to cannabis. Depression and anxiety, people are treating their depression and anxiety through the use of cannabis. Diminished lifetime achievement. Well, sure, if you make someone's medicine illegal and you kick them out of school or you saddle them with a criminal record for the rest of their life when they try to go get employment or housing, sure, they're going to have diminished lifetime achievement. Motor vehicle accidents, we are not seeing any greater risk of marijuana and accidents. We see more people who've been in accidents who have marijuana in their system, but that does not prove in any way they were impaired by marijuana at the time. And finally, chronic bronchitis. Give me a break. Dr. Tashkin debunked this back in 2006.
420 Radio, the home of marijuana experts. Growing plants indoors can be a rewarding hobby, but electricity bills can go through the roof. Then you have to cool down all those big hot lights. It can drive a grower insane. With Lush LED lighting, you can solve many of these issues and double your rewards. Matt and his scientists have developed the perfect light for flowering plants with far less cost and heat. And the results? Very effective. Check out LushLEDlighting.com right now and tell them Radical Russ sent you. In the interest of fair and balanced journalism, the Russ Belville Show presents the anti-drug public service announcement of the day.
Hey, you telling me marijuana's gonna mess up my concentration? I ain't gonna worry about that.
This has been the anti-drug public service announcement of the day. To cure this sort of reefer madness, listen to the Russ Belville Show every weekday on 420 Radio.
If you look at the projected tax revenues in Washington State and in Colorado and also nationally, Colorado 67 million, Washington 560 million, a hypothetical look more nationally $5.8 billion. What do you make of that, Dan?
Well, you know, I think the taxation revenue is the icing on the cake. I mean, for most Americans, the reason that they want to tax and regulate marijuana, again, is to no longer arrest and prosecute adults for using something that's safer than alcohol. My background is as a prosecuting attorney, and I just felt like it was a waste of my time and my taxpayer dollars arresting people for something that's really just not a threat to public safety. So if we can, you know, take revenue away from drug cartels and reallocate law enforcement resources and do all of those things, that makes sense. And if we can maybe collect some tax revenue on top of that, then that's icing on the cake.
Is crack worse for a person than marijuana?
I believe all illegal drugs are bad.
Is methamphetamine worse for somebody's health than marijuana?
I don't think any illegal drug is good.
Is heroin worse for someone's health than marijuana?
Again,
I mean, either yes, no, or I don't know. I mean, if you don't know, you can look this up. You should know this as the chief administrator for the Drug Enforcement Agency. I'm asking you a very straightforward question. Is heroin worse for someone's health than marijuana?
All illegal drugs are bad.
Does this mean you don't know?
Heroin causes an addiction.
Okay.
That causes many problems. It's very hard to kick.
So does that mean that the health impact of heroin is worse than marijuana? Is that what you're telling me?
I think you're asking a subjective question.
No, it's subjective. Just looking at the science, this is your area of expertise. I'm a layperson, but I've read some of the studies. I'm aware of it. I'm just asking you as an expert in the subject area, is heroin worse for someone's health than marijuana?
And I'm answering as a police officer and as a DEA agent that these drugs are illegal because they are dangerous, because they are addictive, because they do hurt a person's health.
So heroin is more addictive than marijuana? Is heroin more addictive than marijuana in your experience?
Generally, the properties of heroin, yes, it's more addictive.
Is methamphetamine more addictive than marijuana?
Well, both are addictive.
Well, is methamphetamine more highly addictive than marijuana?
I think some people become addicted to marijuana, and some people become addicted to methamphetamine.
You mentioned that your top priority, I believe you indicated to us, is abuse of prescription drugs. Is one of the main classifications of prescription drugs painkillers that you're concerned about?
That's correct.
And are those painkillers addictive?
Yes, they are. Very addictive.
Are those painkillers more addictive than marijuana?
All illegal drugs are in Schedule 1 are addictive.
You can't handle the truth.
Entirely legitimate topic for debate.
You have offended my family.
Hey, this is great, man.
And you have offended a Shaolin temple.
One major responsibility is to encourage people to use less drugs.
I know nothing.
I support a change in law to end federal criminal penalties for possession of up to 1 ounce of marijuana.
We don't need no stinking budget.
Homosexuality, immorality generally.
How in the century you have blurred the meaning of the words we, the people.
Be warned, this is not your mother's marijuana.
You could ask yourself a question. Do I feel lucky? Well, do you, punk?
I want to ask you a bunch of questions. I want to have them answered immediately.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Radical Rant.
Welcome back, everyone. 48 after the hour, and today I want to rant about the Portland hemp stalk that took place this weekend at the Waterfront Park. And let's open up by just taking a look at a picture that features prominently in our hometown paper's coverage of the event. What we have here is a picture of the back of a security guy from a security company called TAC 1. TAC 1 had been hired to conduct security as requested by the city council in order to grant a permit to Hempstock in order to prevent the open consumption of cannabis on the waterfront grounds. Now, in the background, this gentleman from TAC 1 is looking directly to his right, kind of obliquely to his right, I should say, about a 15-degree angle to his right, looking at his, let's say 1 o'clock position, where there's a young man in a black t-shirt with a yellow triangle or yellow diamond on it, made to look like a street sign, with a picture, an icon of a pipe, and it says loading zone on it. And this young man, and I would anticipate, I don't know, I'm really bad at judging ages. He could be 16, he could be 26, I don't know, but he's young, probably closer to the 21 side. And in his hand, he's got what looks to be some sort of tube that he is placing to his mouth and inhaling from. My guess is that it would be a cannabis vaporizer. So there we have the TAC 1 security guy, the main stage in the background, and a young man puffing away on a vape pen at the waterfront, 5 weeks away from the vote for legalization on Measure 91. And that's what I wanted to get into, is the wisdom or lack thereof in moving forward with the Hemp Stock Festival, especially just 5 weeks before we're trying to get an election passed for legalization. Now, the reason that the city council initially rejected the Portland hemp stock request, the permits for the park, according to Parks Bureau documents, the issue stemmed from lax security at the 2013 festival held at Kelly Point Park, which drew an estimated 80,000 people. Quote, event personnel were deliberately indifferent to the rampant presence, sale, and use of marijuana, medibles, and alcohol, including use by minors, the Bureau wrote. These violations were not trivial, nor were they isolated. So, rampant use of marijuana by minors at the Kelly Point Park. And I can testify not to last year's, but in the years leading up, the last few that I had been out at Kelly Point Park. And yeah, it was pretty much a free-for-all. If you don't know the geography of Portland, Oregon, the north of us is Washington State, and the border is the Columbia River. There's another river called the Willamette River that flows into the Columbia, and that makes the boundary between East and West Portland. Where the Willamette River meets up with the confluence there of the Columbia River, there's a point out there, and it's where Kelly Point Park is. It's way the hell past all like the loading docks and the industrial areas of town, so it's way the hell out there. It's like Booneyville. And of course, as all the cannabis consumers went out there to the big pot festival in Booneyville, they felt free to light up and enjoy and not really give a damn whether or not kids were out consuming, and media didn't really pay much attention to it. So, as 2014 is coming around, we've got Paul Stanford, who heads up the Hemp and Cannabis Foundation, on the horns of a dilemma. He is trying at this time, going back to 2013, he is moving forward with his plans for not just one ballot initiative to legalize marijuana, but 2 ballot initiatives to legalize marijuana on the heels of his spectacular failure to pass the legalization of marijuana in 2012. You remember that? When Oregon and Washington were passing marijuana legalization with a 55% margin, and Oregon, a state like Washington and Colorado that has decriminalization, that has medical marijuana, that has over 10% of the people using marijuana in the state, very similar state failed with 46%. Why? Well, because Paul Stanford did overreach once again with his little pet project Octa that he's been working on for a couple decades, where he believes that the state of Oregon can follow the UN treaties on drug production and control, because Oregon's a country, apparently. And in 2012, he was pushing for unlimited production, unlimited cultivation, unlimited possession, just so long as it wasn't commercial. Yeah. And of course, the voters rejected that, as well as rejecting his idea of creating a single cannabis commission to which all of the marijuana in Oregon would have been sold, and which would have set all the prices for marijuana in Oregon at the pot shops, and which would have been controlled by the growers like him. So that was rejected in 2012. And following that loss in 2013, marijuana activists here did 2 things. Number 1, we reached out to national funders and found that Drug Policy Alliance was willing to move forward in 2014 if there would be a marijuana legalization push that would be sensible, that would have some realistic limits, and most of all would not have Paul Stanford involved in it whatsoever. And number 2, marijuana activists basically said, hey, let's all get together and work on one thing. Because remember, in the 2012 campaign, there was also 3 different marijuana initiatives that were fighting to get recognition. And because Paul moved forward with his Octa, there was no national funding that moved forward to help in any way, because national funders won't touch the guy with a 10-foot pole. So, having all spread out our resources over 3 different initiatives the previous time in 2012 and failed spectacularly when 2 other states passed, marijuana activists, at least the serious ones in this state, said, hey, let's all work together on one initiative. We've got Drug Policy Alliance coming in. They're going to bring a whole bunch of money. We'll have millions of dollars. We got it vetted by national orgs. We'll be ready to go. We'll be ready to have success. Let's all work together. But not Paul Stanford. No, he didn't want to work together. He could have taken this money that he put forth for the Octa and the hemp amendments, these 2 initiatives that never had a chance of getting on the ballot, that didn't have national funding and support, and had they made the ballot, would have just been in competition with the one that did make the ballot. He could have taken that money and that support and that army of loyal fans of his and put it toward Measure 91, all of us working together, pushing to get this over the hump. But no, he had to go with his own two initiatives. Now, that's fine. Maybe he didn't like the way 91 was written. Maybe he's got an ego trip about wanting to be the guy who legalizes marijuana. I don't know. But what happened is, not only did he not make the ballot, he ended up stiffing people that were working for him. People that were working to gather signatures for this initiative, pair of initiatives that never made the ballot, had to go on strike and had to sue just to get paid. And this follows a legacy of the man not paying his employees for as long as I've been here in this state, since 2003-ish. At least direct knowledge I have reaching back to about 2005. So no money to pay the signature gatherers, no money to pay the employees who have to rush to the bank in hopes that they can get their check cashed before they all start bouncing and setting off the ripple effect. And I have knowledge of other situations where Paul Stanford is owing people money for work they had been promised to be paid for. No money to pay these people, but oddly enough, plenty of money to have the main sponsor banner at both the Seattle Hemp Fest and to be the primary presenting sponsor of this Portland hemp stock. Plenty of money for that. In fact, so much so that when the park required the Portland hemp stock to have additional security because of its past repeated blatant violations of allowing kids to smoke pot openly, Stanford said, quote, "The city made us jump through so many hoops. The new security tacked on additional $60,000 to the costs." Oh, so somehow we were able to come up with another 60 grand to pay for extra security to pull off this festival. But again, signature gatherers, campaign workers, and just plain old employees have to either not get paid, sue, or watch their checks bounce. I got to question the propriety and the intelligence of putting on this festival in the water, at the waterfront, Portland's living room. And sure enough, we got the picture of the kids smoking pot right there in the newspaper, just as I had predicted. We got the MC told the crowd, quote, "Don't smoke any marijuana on the grounds, just step on the other side of the fence. Go smoke pot over there in that part of the park that we're not responsible for." Yeah, that's some responsible use that I'm sure voters on the fence would be glad to hear. We also had an MC saying, "What can we do so that at next year's hemp stock we can have a big marijuana cloud over the event, just like our friends in Colorado and Washington?" Yeah, that's going to get the undecided voter on our side, the idea of big clouds of marijuana over their public parks. And of course, we had the usual I Got's Mine crowd, medical marijuana people. One guy called Tim Johnson of Portland's Kind Supply, "I'm more into decriminalization than legalization. The problem with this year's ballot initiative is it puts the power in the hands of the state instead of turning marijuana over to the people." And another man who goes by the name of Pork Chop, quote, "I don't want to see it be recreational. I want to see it be decriminalized. I want to free the weed." Yes, your typical I Got's Mine, treat it like tomatoes crowd. By God, if it can't be as free as dandelions, then we have to oppose anything else. I've pretty much had it with these pot party people. My charges for possession in Utah have been reinstated. I'm facing a trial on October 30th. Somehow this measure and this move to legalize seems a little more serious to me, with my life, my health, my freedom, my money on the line. I ain't got time for pot parties anymore, especially badly run ones that make it harder to pass legalization.
This is the Russ Belville Show. The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at radicalruss.com.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it.